something really should be concerned about. A mate of mine, Stuart Bonds, thought I'd give him a call and go, what's the story with all this? So, Stuart, seems like every headline is talking about this. Thanks for joining me tonight. Tell us, what's the go?
AdBlue, what is that? Why do we need it? Yes, this seems to be dominating the world headlines at the moment, especially Australian headlines, because we only manufacture about 10 to 20% on a good day of what we need. AdBlue, in short, is a chemical that goes into your car, right? It's got a separate tank, goes into your vehicle. It gets sprayed into the exhaust system after the combustion takes place. So the combustion takes place in your cylinder goes up, squirts diesel in, bang, the explosion happens, gases get released from the engine, they get pushed out your exhaust system. Some of those gases are toxic, mainly nitrogen oxide. So what the AdBlue does is when it sprays in, it mixes with the diesel gases, the particulates, and it has a chemical reaction when it hits your catalytic converter. Your catalytic converter is like a filter in the back of your car. It has a chemical reaction and it changes the nitrous oxide to water, basically. So it's a greener, cleaner way of taking harmful gases out of your engine.
Cool. So why are we concerned about having a shortage of it?
The main chemical component in urea is, in AdBlue is urea. Right? So it's about 33% urea, and then the other percentage of it is basically a non-conductive water that's in it. And the world uses urea for many different purposes. Explosives, it uses it, but its main use is in fertilizer, right? And this problem, the shortage of urea, first showed up in fertilizer. Now, there's stories getting around that even in India, the military was unloading the ships with the fertilizer and taking it to police stations where you had to show proof that you owned a farm and what you were going to do with that fertilizer, and then they would escort you home fertilizer. Now, you have to remember that most of the food that is grown in the supermarkets and all around the world, frankly, is enhanced, right? It has, might as well say steroids in it, and these steroids are chemical fertilizers, right? And urea is one of the main ingredients in this. And we've seen massive worldwide shortages of urea. And so the countries who produce the urea, mainly China, have decided that it's more important that their people have the urea than everybody else, because it makes common sense for the Chinese Communist Party that your people health and well-being comes before everybody else's, and they were dumb enough to shut down the urea factories. So why should you send it overseas? Which is a logical argument, I would say.
Another front in the trade war. Maybe this chart, the market always seems to know right, is a good indicator of what urea prices have done between January 2021 and even this only goes to October, and even then I'm blocking the chart of it, and that's of a scale of 480 to 1,560 Chinese yuan, so a tripling in price over the year. Okay, yeah. All right. So urea is...
Sorry, what this inspires to, is higher food costs, because what this does, as I said, it's a turbo booster, it's a stimulant, it is steroids for the food production process. So you get higher crop yields, denser crops, you get more bang for your buck when you throw this stuff on the ground. I mean, as a cattle farmer, I use it every now and then. We drive around with a tractor and we have a spinner at the back of the tractor, goes in like a hopper, feeds in, throws it out the back, and it spreads it all over the ground. And then that chemical goes into the ground, and hey presto, it fertilizes the ground. Right? They, come in like little pellets. So, but this chemical is also used in a lot of other things as
If
well.
I'm understanding this right, if I can, are we using fertilizer to drive around?
Basically, you're using urine. So
So we're
chemical,
using the stuff
you,
that we help.
you urinate. You urinate,
So we're using
right?
stuff that
And
we
this,
could be using to help plants grow to drive around with.
yes, yes, yes. So it is inevitable whenever you have the government come in and manipulate something, as in, or regulate something, as in they regulate, we must use AdBlue in our cars, which is a concentration of urea, that urea has to come from somewhere. And so obviously it's come out of the agricultural sector. It's come out of the fertilizer sector because they're the largest user of it. And now we have a shortage of both. So the price, they say that the best recovery, best solution for high prices is high prices, because that will make capital and investment move into the area that it's treated best. And if you can make substantial amount of profit producing urea, then people will invest money in urea factories. The problem is the factories and the urea itself is extremely toxic, which is why we don't want to produce it in our countries anymore. As with a lot of products, we don't want to build them or make them, but we want to consume them. We want to use them. We don't want to deal with the waste products that are produced from this stuff. We don't want to deal with the urea factory, but we will deal with the AdBlue that comes in a nice container. It's pumped into your car. Yeah. But the problem is, Chris, is that AdBlue is it's not your passenger cars you're with, right? If people can't drive, they have other options. They could take an Uber, they could take a train, they could take a car that does not have AdBlue in it. The real problem with this is in trucking, buses, agricultural equipment, earth moving equipment, trains, all those sorts of pieces of machinery. The newer they are, to meet emission standards, it is more likely that they will have an AdBlue system on those machines. And when that registers that you are out of AdBlue, so your tank is empty, your machine, car, train, whatever it is, your engine goes into what's known as limp mode. So it will allow you to move the machine or the car or whatever, but you may only be able to drive in second or third gear or something, right? You won't be able to
Okay,
tow a
so
trailer.
there's a shortage of urea, or the prices have gone up. Okay, you pay more for it. Prices go up, prices go down. Fine. What's the problem with high prices? They've tripled, but house prices have gone up 20, 40%. We're not, well, certainly the RBA doesn't seem to be panicking about that. Prices change. Why does a commodity price like urea, or how is this a shortage? The price is just more expensive, right?
Because we don't produce it. So with a house, anyone who's gone to build a house lately will know that you can have a house, you can order a house. It's just you won't get the house for 2 years. Now, with something as fragile as this, or what do you call it? The demand, the we have a 3-day supply chain thing, right? It goes from farm to shelf in 3 days. We do not have an enormous stockpile of food somewhere that we can just, move onto the shelves that's out the back of the supermarket. All of that is called just-in-time delivery. Sorry, that's what I was looking for. Just-in-time delivery service. So the retailer, Woolworths and Coles and that, they don't have product that rots out the back, right? It shows up, it goes on the shelf immediately. It's like Macca's when they went away from having stacks of burgers to it's made as soon as you arrive. They don't have any waste. Now, the downside of that is they don't have any stock, right? So we have no build-up, pent-up supply, right? Though it's all the supply is on the farms. To get it to the shop, it's got to go via truck. For the trucks to take it, they need this AdBlue, right? Now, the truck or the machine does not need AdBlue to operate functionally. It does not do anything to help the engine. It is shot in after the engine has done what it's done. And the AdBlue system can be simply turned off by plugging a laptop into the computer of the machine, turning it off.
So the trucks keep driving. Everything's just fine. It just means that they release more emissions. Not great. We don't necessarily want that, but fine. Without trucks, Australia stops, but the trucks don't seem to be stopping. It's more of an enforced technical problem. Regardless, even regardless, so the price goes up, we buy it from a different place. We don't produce it, so we'll buy it from India, South America, Europe, anywhere we can get it, right?
India doesn't have it. China has the bulk of the factories, and there, as I said, there's a worldwide shortage of urea, and it's used in more than one product. So the urea price is going to continue to go up. You can't just build a urea factory. That we are going to run out of urea in February or March of 2022. So you can't build a urea factory fast enough to deal with this problem. So we can outbid people, we can pay a fortune for it, but ultimately that's what most countries are going to do, especially Europe, because they have the bulk of this stuff in there. It's called Euro spec. Most of our trucks are Euro spec now, means they can operate in Europe, and to operate in Europe, they have to meet very specific engines emission standards, and that means they need to have blue. Because we're such a small purchaser of these machines, we get the standard that everyone else has. So there's no supply-demand solution to this at the moment because the supplier basically has a monopoly, which is China.
So we can't just force China to sell it to us, but at the same time, we outbid them. Because this is not an Australian local problem. Despite as much as Bob Catter might want us to intervene on it, we can't solve a global shortage of something on our own, especially if we don't produce it. The only other solution, as you said, was we modify our trucks so that they emit more emissions, but don't need AdBlue. But then we've got a problem beyond that.
You've got the SCR AdBlue fluid injector just there. It sprays in, and the diesel particulates are caught in the other filter, just the larger filter, and then your exhaust gas goes out the back end. Now, what you would do in a common sense world is allow the mechanics to switch the AdBlue injector off and reprogram, or what we call remap, the computer of the truck or the train or the excavator or whatever to tell not to go into limp mode when the AdBlue goes low, and disconnect the AdBlue system and allow us just to continue to operate. Now, this is a problem that's been brought on by, I would say, over-regulation. But when the decision is deal with some emissions as if your trucks were operating like 5 years ago. I mean, there's trucks operating. My Land Cruiser doesn't have this system on it. There's heaps of cars driving around that do not have this, and there's plenty of old trucks that don't have this system. It's just as new trucks come out, they must have this system. Theory goes, eventually everybody will have it because you need to replace your trucks eventually. So this is a problem that is easily fixed. We moved laws to lock people in houses, and we did all sorts of crazy things with COVID. That is a natural occurring event, a pandemic. It happens
what
all
you're
the
really
time.
talking about there is a political problem and solution to a
The political
market
problem.
situation.
Now, I'm not saying turn it off permanently. I'm saying practically, there's a shortage of this stuff, and we can deal with that shortage by just not using the product. That also has the benefit of allowing more urea to be used for fertilizer, because in Australia, we have excess food, right? We export, we can feed 3 or 4 Australias with the food that we produce here. So we don't have a food problem. Now, the countries that do have food problems, when their food prices go up 10 or 20%, that's death for some people. That's chaos. We don't live in that world. We're very lucky to live in that world, but we should have sympathy for people who are in that situation. We should have sympathy for the farmers that hold farming operations overseas, rely on this chemical. And this is a rich person's problem, as far as I see it. It's a rich person's problem. So we just turn it off, we switch it off, we put an embargo on it for 12 months, must have it switched on by this date. Or if we get a supply of urea back up in June next year, make a call and switch them back on in June.
Your average Sydney side or metropolis, this is a good comment which is being raised. To bring it back to your average consumer, how is this affecting them? Because trucks is a bit of a opaque. Is this really going to affect me? Someone drives a truck a little bit less. So if someone's driving their diesel van or diesel SUV, is this just going to mean a more expensive AdBlue price, or is this going to mean an empty pump?
No. You will not get AdBlue. Right? You have to understand. This is the whole supply chain, right? This is from the farm, the tractor, the harvester, right? The train. This is the truck that moves your goods to market. This is the city is a funnel for food, right? And to get that food to market, we need machinery. And that machinery now has this crap put in it. And because it has this stuff, to turn it off, which is very simple, you can override it, turn it off. But the problem is there's a $22,000 fine attached to doing this, right? To turning this system off because of the environmental regulations that are attached to it. So people are they're not going to do it unless they absolutely have to. And this is why I think the government should step in and say there will be no fines, right? Australia will not stop operating. We will continue to operate. Food will be on the shelf and you will be able to continue to eat. Because I can tell you right now, if they let this go, and we're all about risk management, right? In the odd scenario that this turns out to be as bad as we're thinking, the shite could hit the fan big time, because they cannot operate. And you're talking about 50%, 50% of Australia's trucks will not be on the road. Everything you eat, everything in your cupboard, everything you do is touched by a truck in some way. And if it's not touched by a truck, it's touched by fertilizer in some way. And so
again, it's not. This isn't the first time markets have faced shortages. I mean, If we just look at the chart, I mean, we're still buying urea even at 3 times the price. The world does keep on turning. And in wartime, there's two approaches to it. Either the price goes up to the point which people stop buying and it's unaffordable, or it gets rationed. And that's what happened during many crisis situations, is that coupons were handed to everyone and they could buy 1 loaf of bread per day or 2 ounces of meat, etc., etc. Britain was on rationing all the way up until the mid 1950s, 10, 15 years later. I think it was only in 58 that they finally came off rationing in Britain. But so, okay, we reached that situation, and just as we saw the shelves cleared during the peak of Corona and what have you, we end up with a situation where we've got a coupon for AdBlue, and you get to buy only so much, so many liters per week, or the price reaches the equivalent of $8 a liter for diesel, and that affecting. So coupons, right? And we just ration AdBlue.
But you're talking about rationing an industrial system for a country. There is a solution. You just go into your mechanic, he plugs his laptop in, he types in that he doesn't want the AdBlue system to operate, and you just leave within half an hour and you go on your way, right? What you're talking about is wartime rationing for a problem that is not wartime equivalent. Like, if you stop this, Chris, you got to remember, it's not just food that gets carted around. Everything gets carted around. Paper, right, for your printers, computers, right? Every single thing, the computer chair you're sitting on, the camera that you're looking in, everything has come to you by one way or another, has been touched by urea, whether it's in this country or another one. This is not a simple fix. Now, this may just blow over, and China has built hospitals in 3 weeks, right? They may be able to pump up enough urea factories to flood the world with urea in that time. I highly doubt it, but you have to make preparations for the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is we run out. And I've experienced having a lack of urea here. We didn't have any fertilizer. Now, I don't often use fertilizer, but the fertilizer I bought this year is double the price of what it normally is. Doubled. Now, not a huge expense to me. I don't normally do it. Cost me a few $1,000s. But if your livelihood relies on it and it doubles in price, it's a big difference.
So this is something that is affecting us across the board. But if there were one item that it comes back to, it's that China stopped the export of it because they were facing a shortage of it. And it comes back to something
Well,
that tends to be a bit of a trend, that a single point of dependence on China, whether it was for PPE in February last year or now urea in December 21.
yeah, but you got to remember, Chris, that right, when the sailors sailed all over the ocean, right, when we used to explore the oceans on wooden ships. Now, you used to they prepare for everything. They would take pigs and cows and chickens, and they would take all this stuff with them. They'd take women, they'd take children, so they could teach them and do all this stuff. And they did all this preparation. And often what they used to die of was scurvy, right? Because they missed a little chemical called vitamin K. Just this tiny little thing called vitamin K. Now, you do not realize, as a country, what your vitamin K is. You don't know what thing it is that you are going to send to another country that is going to break the back of your country. You don't know what that vital ingredient is. It took them hundreds of years to figure out that it was green fruits and green vegetables that they needed, right? Because obviously they used to eat that and consume that stuff first, right? Because it'd go rotten. And that's what we do here. We consume those products, first, and we just assume that they're going to come. They don't always come, right? This time it hasn't come. We've given away something that we cannot reproduce. We're out in the middle of the ocean, floating with no wind, and we can't produce fruits and vegetables. This is our vitamin K. So will we wake up and recognize it and realize it, and maybe pull back a little bit of this? I'm not saying we need to produce 100% of our urea or 100% of our diesel, but maybe 30% is not a bad idea. 40%, you know.
Then there's always the opportunity cost. Anytime we're producing our own something, we're not producing something else that might be of higher value. And then we get into the discussion of, are we a nation or are we an economy? And we're really into the weeds. And I'm going to switch over to some comments to wind this out. Why I brought up Coney's concern about China. Zara brought up an interesting comment here that, okay, great. No diesel, no AdBlue, fine, keep it all for the important trucking stuff and switch everyone to EVs really quick. Right? Fixed. Great.
You're talking about an EV industry that doesn't exist. It is not at the scale that we're at right now. You could put all the EV cars in the world in Australia, you wouldn't even be driving Australia. But we're not. We are talking about a problem that is spanning the globe, right? You're talking about mining equipment. Mining equipment, so a dump truck. Not all dump trucks are like this, but some of them, the new ones that have this system on them, they use about 4,000 litres of diesel every day. Right? They lose hundreds of litres of AdBlue every single day. Now, in the small scale where you live in a town or in a suburb or whatever, you don't see the industrialisation of the world that siphons into these cities, it makes sense, right? But on a practical scale, it does not make sense.
The proportion of fuel that gets used by personal cars or freight, and you end up with the difference where it ends up that even if we replaced all of the passenger cars, if we wanted to, it didn't matter because more CO2, at least with this giant shipping, aviation, as much as passenger cars matter, there's a whole segment that Tesla don't make a 20-ton dump truck, and Tesla certainly haven't rolled out their freight version of the Tesla Semi yet. They're there when it comes to passenger cars, but yeah, there's an entire vertical that just isn't there yet.
We talk about like trucks that use your yearly fuel consumption in one day, right? Like it's hard, like it's impossible to get your head around this stuff. Like you're talking about a truck that drives for an hour that uses your month's fuel in 1 hour, right? That's what I'm saying. You don't realize when you live in a city, you don't realize the size of the earth moving equipment or the tractors, right? Some of the tractors are bigger than your like apartment block, and they're driving around and they're creating food. They're spraying weeds. They're ripping the ground up. They're plowing it up so that you can eat. You don't see it. You don't understand. You look and you think, well, it's just this guy dropped this thing off to me in a toll truck. Well, unfortunately, a toll truck is a very small issue. Like, how do you think the toll truck got the stuff? From a semi-trailer. They got it from a cargo ship. They got it from a mine.
Yeah. I guess what you're trying to part is just the sheer scale, which really you can only take in from the air of some of the coal mines up there and the vehicles. That's
well, there's
harder to imagine.
There's some scale. There's some scale just there, Chris. When you zoomed in on that truck, now that truck, I'll just scale it down to like a trailer load. The trailer might carry about a ton of material. That truck probably carries 300 150 trailer loads in one go. Right, so imagine driving to the dump to dump off some stuff out of your backyard 350 times. How long that would take? That truck does that in one go, like probably 20 minutes. So,
And if each truck is the equivalent of 500 utes, well, really, we're looking at motorways full of trucks, motorways full of utes right here. And that's just one mine, and there are several up there. Several.
There's several of them here, but you got to remember that those mines, they don't power Australia. We use about 10% of the coal that we export. So we power from our mines, we power around 10 to 12 Australias. That's what comes out of our country. And that's just the coal. If you include the gas and the oil and everything, we probably maybe power, I don't know, maybe if we do 10 Australias, 12 Australias in coal, all up, we might do 20, 25 Australias around the world, providing electricity and energy for those nations. So, you know, we're a big player in the energy space, Chris. We just don't make any urea.
Stuart Bonds, thanks very much. Thinking of running at the next election?
Peace. I am running. I think this election is going to be extremely, extremely interesting, Chris. I think it's going to be hard. The last election was fought very much along the lines of climate change. This one, I think ScoMo is going to be doing his best to focus on climate change, but seeing he's come to the net zero table as well, it's going to be very, very hard for him to throw stones, if you know what I mean.
Chat for another time about the next election. But AdBlue, thanks for helping us sort the wheat from the chaff.
All right, Chris. See you, mate.
Cheers, mate. Talk to you next time.
Bye.